Hi, I'm Sasikumar. I scored the most important goal for Singapore in 1998. Growing up in Ang Mo Kio in Avenue 10, living in a place where all young boys, the only thing we thought about was playing football. My brother, who's 2 years older, introduced me to football as well. So playing in the neighborhood, that's all we do whole day. We just go to school, come back and play football. And slowly started playing for school. But I come from a very humble background. So when I asked my dad for a pair of boots, or my brother and I asked for a pair of boots, all my dad could afford at that time was, I still remember very clearly, was a $10 pair of boots called Torch from China. And the worst part, it's a 4x2. So it's like for wet weather, we used to play and use it in really hard ground. There's a twist to this whole story because there's only one pair of boots. And my father had to buy for my brother, right, the size, my brother is like 2 sizes smaller than me in terms of the foot size, and he's a left-legger and I'm a right-legger. So he ended up wearing the left side of the boot, and I started wearing the right side of the boot. And on the other leg, we probably be barefoot or wear school shoes. That's how I was introduced to football. So I was playing for Gibraltar Crescent, a team in the Premier League, and I never played first team football for them. I was part of the squad, but played more in the under-19s. And one day, a coach by the name of Robert Lim watched me playing in the under-19. And at that time, they were assembling the Singapore B team to go to Surabaya to play. And all of a sudden, I got a call from the club to say that I have to report for Singapore B team training. And I was really shocked because I've never played senior football. I was just playing under-19s. And that was the first call-up. I was super nervous. But also at the same time, I knew this was my time. This was my opportunity to go there and show what I can really do. And that's what I did. On the first day of training, it was at 5:30. I remember being at the Jalan Besar Stadium at 3:30 because I couldn't sleep the whole night before. I wanted to be there early, didn't want to be late. And I went there, and at that point in time, Barry Whibritt, who had just come to Singapore, was the coach for the Singapore B team, and he was selecting a bunch of players to go. And a lot of the players from the Singapore A team who were playing in the Malaysia Cup, those who were not playing, were then part of the B team. And a few other players, myself and a few others, were on trial. I did exceptionally well in that training, and I still remember this. And a couple of days ago, I was just telling someone, as I was walking out the pitch, Barry Whibritt came to me and said, "Are you sure you didn't play any senior football?" I said, "No, I just played in under-19s. And he said something to me that always stuck with me. He said, "If you don't become a full team national player one day, I'll be very surprised." So, and I got the call to come back the next day, and then I went with the team to Indonesia, Surabaya, and the rest is history. So that was a turning point in my life. I had one chance to grab it, and I'm so glad that I was able to impress. Okay, let me start with the qualification, right? We had to qualify to go for the main tournament. And actually, not a lot of people know about this, but in pre-season when we were in Thailand, I had a knee injury. And luckily in that tour, I didn't have to play in the first 2 games. And then in the final game of the tour, I was only put on to play in the field of play in the last 45 minutes in the second half. So I ran into the dressing room, emptied a tub of deep heat onto my knee. I couldn't feel my knee and came back out and played, and thankfully my knee held up. And then that allowed me to be part of the team to go to Vietnam. And I always think about it like, if my knee had given way in that 45 minutes, I would have never gone to Vietnam. But when we got there, this time the feeling was a little bit different because there was no pressure on us. So much so that except for 2 journalists, no other media actually bothered to turn up in Vietnam because this was a young bunch of untested players at international level. The senior boys didn't come. Singapore was going through a tough patch at the time with the national team. And when we got there, there was really no pressure on us. But what was really important is that the first meeting that we had after Barry spoke to us, Nazri, Rafi, and Kade, they called for a meeting with all of us in. And basically, we talked about how we're going to approach this tournament. When we walked away from that meeting, I realized that this was a very different national team than what I was used to. There was something special about this team. Everyone was there to win. They wanted to win. They wanted to win for themselves. They wanted to win for Barry. And mind you, a lot of the team has already been working with Barry for the last 4 years with the Olympic team. So we knew how he wanted to play. So when we walked away from there, we had this quiet confidence that this team possibly can do something. And it all started with the first game against Malaysia. And, we won the match 2-0 against Malaysia. And that, I suppose, was the starting point for something that was an unbelievable run that we went on. And like I said, it was 2-0. We played against some really good players. I remember marking, I think it was Khalid Jamalus at the time, was one of the top strikers in Malaysia, also Southeast Asia. And I'm looking at my teammates, myself, Subramani, ID Skanda, then we got Rizal in goal. That must be at that time the best defensive backline in Southeast Asia. And then as we progressed, we played Laos, we played Vietnam, we drew with Vietnam. We should have won that game, but we drew with Vietnam. Then we had to wait to see who we're going to play in the semi-finals. And then it was well documented between it was Thailand and Indonesia, that both wanted to lose so that they can play us. And we were actually at the stadium watching it. So I suppose going into the semi-finals, Barry didn't even bother giving a team talk or whatsoever. He came into the room and he basically said, if you guys had any pride, if you feel anything in you that the way that you were disrespected by these two teams, that they wanted to, that trying their best to lose so that they can actually play against you, you go out there and show them why they should play you. And he said, okay, the same team, no change, go out there and play. So I would say in the tunnel as we are going to play, we're looking at the Indonesian players. We were like hungry lions, like we couldn't wait for the whistle to go. And the Indonesian players felt it. They when they looked at us in the tunnel, they knew they were in for a ride. So you could see from the very first tackle we put in, we were pressing them like mad all the way through. We could have played for 3 days. There was no chance Indonesia were going to beat us because it was pure hunger to win. Because the way they disrespected us, something that I don't wish upon anybody, any teams. But there was a really good team effort, and when we scored, we celebrated and stuff like that. We knew. I think if we got to the final, we kind of knew that there's a really good chance. There's a 50-50 chance that we can go away with this trophy, right? And Vietnam was clear favorites. Vietnam was clear favorite. The night before, as we were sleeping, there were like 20,000 motorbikes below the hotel making all sorts of noise, trying to keep us at night. Not that it affected us. But that whole atmosphere of being in the cup final against a host nation, 70 million people behind them, and a very young team, if you look at it, and the average age of the team was very low at the time, and a lot of rookies, part of the team. And we just had this belief. That tonight was going to be our night. And the funny thing is that for the previous 4 years, whenever I played with Barry in the national team, I always say, Coach, I'm going to score tonight. So just before the game, he said, Sasi, this would be a nice time for you to score. You've been saying it for 4 years. So, and the game was so intense. We wanted to win so badly that myself and Kade, we almost came to blows. Because Kade is a winner, I'm a winner, and we just wanted to win. Like, if there was one example in my career of two players wanting the same thing but trying to kill each other, it was that game. And ironically, it was Kade who actually crossed the ball for me to score. And after that, he ran over and we hugged and made up and stuff like that. Because that's the beauty of this team, right? We can disagree. We don't have to like each other. But when we put on the shirt, it means a lot to us. We are now fighting for the same flag. So there wasn't any, I would say, agenda, any motivation or anything that is different. It was the same. We were all pulling in the same direction. We just showed it differently. And it was a beautiful moment. I think when I scored that goal, and it was completely silent at the stadium, except for a few Singaporeans there celebrating and stuff like that. So it didn't really occur to me how big that goal was. until much later. We were living in that moment, and it was such a beautiful moment. And I keep saying it whenever I kind of think about the game. It's so fresh. I mean, this must be over 20 years now. And I still get a lot of stick when I go back to Vietnam. When they find out who I am, they still have a go at me. But that's one of the things that I will never ever forget in my life. And I speak to my kids about it, and hopefully they can tell their kids one day about how their grandpa made history for Singapore. I would say that when the whole world doesn't believe in you, you got to believe in yourself. No matter what people say to you, that you are not good enough, you are, why are you here? You're not good enough, and all of the stuff, negative stuff that will be said to you, and people will impose their own insecurities on you. But then you got to rise above all of that and keep going with a purpose in mind. I mean, that's what I had. The more people humiliated me, insulted me, that was my oxygen to go further. And there will be haters. There will be people who tell you that you can't do it. And I think that was what really fueled me, if you ask me, the doubt. Because people used to call me tall, gangly, and stuff like that, but clumsy. Those are the words were used. But when I scored that goal, right, everything came a full circle for me. The 5 kilometers around Yishun Ring Road that I ran almost on a daily basis for a couple of years, the sacrifices I made, the humiliation I went, but these were the things that really fueled me. Because if the questions were not asked of me, I would have never achieved what I achieved. So my message is that when somebody says something bad, somebody says something negative, somebody puts you down, please look at it as a chance to get above that, not as a chance to be going further down into the hole, right? So even transitioning from sports to business, nobody really gave me a chance to build a business. And that's why I ended up building a $10 million business, because people told me I couldn't do it. So that's my advice to young people today. The more people say that you can't, the more you should actually excel, because that should be your oxygen.